Warning: this video contains graphic video game violence and information on hacking that can damage your computer and/or display device. Do not attempt these modifications unless you know what you are doing. If you're into Twitch gaming, and you must be if you're watching a video about optimizing for Twitch gaming, then you know that the number one important factor is speed. But, these days, it's also good to have really nice eye candy too. And you can do it if you have a powerful enough system. And you don't need the latest and greatest CPU. You just need a really fast GPU, and you need to do some tweaks. And there's a very important one that I'm going to demonstrate here, which is Dynamic Super Resolution, which is the NVIDIA version of GPU upscaling. I'm sure there's an ATI one as well, but I'm using NVIDIA. So this is for NVIDIA people, because there's a problem with it. But I'm going to show you how to get around that. And it's really important. So let's begin by watching a little bit of me partying on UT3. And here it is in a window. I'm going to go full screen in a moment. Look here at the FPS counter. Notice how it's basically at 240 as it begins. And that's what we're talking about now. We're talking about super fast refresh rates and important things that you need to keep in mind on many levels. So let's get into some action first. With the sniper rifle, baby. Now, you may not believe it, but this is 800 by 600 resolution. I'm using Dynamic Super Resolution and 3 different kinds of anti-aliasing, all at the same time. So, as you can see, it's beautiful graphics. All the eye candy is completely cranked. We've got bloom, we've got dynamic lights, we've got dynamic shadows, we've got headshots. Super fast. Look at that frame rate, even when things are going crazy. So now I'm switching to a different time in the game, using the shock rifle for maximum graphical goodness. Things flying around, screen fulls of splash effects. And look at the frame rate. Look at that frame rate while everything's just going wild. This is a 10-year-old CPU. All right, that's enough of that. So, well, maybe a little more. I want to see some real splash damage here. As you can see, it stays tight and responsive no matter how crazy things get. It's critical when you're doing Twitch gaming that when you move your hand by X number of degrees, everything responds in kind, no matter what. All right, I think that's enough action. So, as I was saying, when you make a hand movement, you want that screen to move the right amount. And if you've got things getting laggy, that's not going to happen. That's why it's important to have the highest frame rate possible and the highest refresh rate possible. The refresh rate is not just about being able to see each frame. It's also about the lag time. Look here at the reading for the number of FPS, and here, this is the response time of the system, the lag of the system. As you can see, it's just shy of 5 milliseconds. That's really tight. But when it gets up there, let's look at a spot where it gets up to 240. I'm just very quickly going through here, so eventually we'll find a spot where there's not. Well, there you go. So as you can see, at this point, there was a lot of graphical goodness going on. You can see the distortion effects and all the rest of that, but it was still, look at that, 4 milliseconds. That's just incredible. That's tight. And here's the thing. I actually got it to 300 hertz on my 10-year-old monitor. And at that point, you're talking 3 milliseconds. That's just tight. That's crazy tight. It's beautiful. Anyways, here's the thing. To get this beautiful graphic quality and the smoothness at 800 by 600 looking so beautiful. Again, let's just take a quick look at the screen, full screen. That doesn't look like 800 by 600, does it? It's really nice. That's because of all the enhancements that are going on. And as I mentioned earlier, a big problem with what we're talking about here is Dynamic Super Resolution. If we go to the change resolution page on the NVIDIA control panel, look at this little note here. It says, to enable custom resolutions, turn off Dynamic Super Resolution. So what's the point of having Dynamic Super Resolution if you can't use it? Because what they're not mentioning here is it's not just custom resolutions. It should say custom resolutions and refresh rates. Because I'm just showing you right here, look, 800 by 600, according to the NVIDIA control panel, the maximum I can do is 120. In fact, it's the only option at this point because of all the hacking that I've done on the NVIDIA side as well. But that's not 240. 120 is terrible for Twitch gaming. It's so slow. You're talking about double the lag time. And when you're getting up to like 10 milliseconds, that's not good. Anyways, I'm going to show you how to get around this problem. It's with this utility called Custom Resolution Utility. And here's the README file that comes with it. And I've got this last paragraph here highlighted in blue because I want to take this opportunity to warn you again not to mess around with this stuff if you don't know what you're doing. You're gonna fry your monitor. You could fry your video card. You could fry your whole computer. You could burn your house down. It's just nothing you want to mess around with if you don't know what you're doing. Okay, so you've been warned again. And see, I left my warning here on the screen. Keep that warning in sight at all times. So here is the setting that I created here for 240 at 800 by 600. It's up here in this category, detailed resolutions. There are 4 slots for this. Luckily, we only need 1 for what we're doing. As you can see, the monitor is a Seiki 50-inch. The 04 is the first 4K panel. This is, as I said, from 2013. And it's rated for 120 hertz. As you can see here, I'm using it at 240. And I actually have another setting for 300 hertz. Yes, you heard that right, 300 hertz on a panel from 2013. It's actually a hybrid TV and computer monitor. At any rate, let me show you what I did for 240. I'll explain the 300 business later. So normally you would be adding, but since I've already created it, I'm going to show it to you by going into Edit. I'll bring this over here, more central. The key, and I'm going to give you a little hint here, is you want to get your pixel clock as low as possible when you're pushing things way outside of their stated limits. But you have to do research first, by the way. Make sure that what you're doing is not beyond the physical capabilities of the device. There's a difference between how it's rated and how it was built. What the components are capable of. At any rate, getting a low pixel clock requires some fiddling, but there's a great way to take a shortcut in this program. There are presets here for the timing. A good place to start is exact. And then, as you can see, when I chose exact for 800 by 600, it got us to 144, which is really good compared to what you would have automatically. Automatic is 155. Doesn't sound like big changes, but believe me, these are big changes. But we can get lower than even the exact reduced is 144. And usually that's what you want. The one that's, we're not going to get into the technical details here. If you don't know about this stuff, then you shouldn't be watching this video in the first place. Anyways, you can get lower than reduced. And there's a quick way to do that. And that is to use some of these so-called standard adjustments here. It's beautiful, isn't it, that we live in an age where standard means more than one? There are all these different standards that are all supposedly standard. And the one that I'm using is CVT RB2. And as you see, it drops it down to 142.56. And that's a difference, especially for 300 hertz. We're dealing with 240 right now, and I'll explain why in a minute. So, normally I would now hit OK, but that would change settings, and I'm using the NVIDIA utility to capture this video, and that will destroy the video. So for the sake of you being able to see the rest of this video, we'll pretend that I hit OK. And then there's another step that you have to do after that. Well, and that's to hit OK on this, but there's another step after that. So once you've done what you need here, then you hit OK here. Again, I'm going to hit cancel, but there's another step after that. And that is, there's a little program that comes with it called restart. And so now you want to hit the restart button. I've already changed all these settings before starting this video, so now it says restart again. So you're going to pretend that I'm clicking this and that it only says restart, but it doesn't matter. Either way, you need to restart the video subsystem for these changes to take effect. And that's what this does. So if I was to click that, the video would end, but normally, if you click it on yours, the screen will go black for a few seconds while everything restarts. And then hopefully come back. If it doesn't, if you change something really badly, then quickly hit F8. And that will, it's sort of like a safe mode recovery. But hopefully you'll never have to do that. But just keep that in mind. If your screen goes black and never comes back, quickly hit F8. The life of your system depends on it. I'm not going to warn you anymore. You've been warned plenty of times. So once that's done, now let's go back to the NVIDIA utility. Now again, we've already done all of this. The video game is proof. It was running at 240 hertz. So look at 800 by 600 in the NVIDIA. Look, it still only says 120. Well, how do we get 240? Why did I do all of that? We're not talking about NVIDIA. We're talking about the Windows subsystem. So you have to go, right-click on your desktop, choose Display Settings, and this is where you will change your resolution. I'm not going to change this because of the video capture that's going on. So just imagine I changed it to 800 by 600. It would then immediately change to 800 by 600 at 240 hertz. So we're ready to rumble, right? Well, unfortunately, maybe not. Because of the complexities of systems, you may have, it depends on what the revision is of Windows. And I'm not just talking about whether it's Windows 10 or 11 or whatever. It's also within that, which revision number will change the behavior, which updates have been applied, etc. It's all black magic. And on top of that, it may change depending on which video card you have. Even if it's NVIDIA, it may be different for different cards. And on top of that, it could also change based on which NVIDIA driver you're running. So The next thing you're going to want to do if you don't get the right refresh rate is click here on Advanced Display Settings. And here you have a drop-down for choosing your refresh rate. Again, we're using 1920 by 1080 right now for this video, so this isn't the right refresh rate, but it would be 240, or you would have the option, depending on how things have been set by you in that custom refresh rate utility. Which brings me to a point about that, getting back to it. And is it gone now? I think it is. Yes, it is. So let me just bring it up again. When you run it for the first time, you're going to see all sorts of options checked here. You're going to see all sorts of other resolutions shown. I've deleted everything that I'm not wanting, and that way, only the refresh rates I want show up. If you recall, when we looked at the refresh rate for 1920 by 1080, it was 96. Well, look here, 1920, 96. What a coincidence. It's the only one I have set. So these are the refresh rates that these resolutions will provide under Windows, not with the NVIDIA utility. Got it? So we're playing with Windows under the hood here, not with the NVIDIA stuff. So now, getting back to the NVIDIA utility, if we go to the Manage 3D settings, this is where, first of all, here's the control for Dynamic Super Resolution. I've got it set to the maximum high-speed setting, and the smoothness is set also to maximum, 100%. There's a trade-off between smoothness and sharpness, but because we're cranking up the lowest resolution, which is 800 by 600, we want maximum smoothness because our goal is to eliminate aliasing, jaggies, not to have maximum sharpness, which would increase jaggies. So that's why I've got the smoothness set to 100% to give us this. See, like look here at this 40. See how nice and clean and smooth that looks? That's because I've got the smoothness set to 100%. So this is important. But now on a different topic altogether, getting back to our whole optimizing for Twitch gaming, you want to make sure that you set your max frame rate to the same value as your refresh rate, in this case 240, because there's no point in having it drawing more frames than can be displayed. And this is especially critical for Twitch gaming, because during times when the action is not intense, you don't want all of your resources being pinned so that it can draw 2,000 frames per second of a brick wall that you're facing for whatever reason. And then suddenly you get attacked by 8 bots and everything just hitches and glitches because all of your cache was filled up drawing 10,000 frames per second of a brick wall for nothing. So it's critical to set your maximum frame rate to the same value as your refresh rate. And that reminds me of how I was talking earlier about 300 frames per second. 300 hertz being an option that I unearthed when I was optimizing and hacking for my monitor. So why am I not using 300? Well, I do, but only in certain cases where it's warranted. The match that we were watching was me against half a dozen bots. And so there was just so much action at all times that it can't do 300 in those kind of conditions where you've just got so much stuff flying around and all your details set to maximum and all of your add-ons, all of your effects, everything is just cranked. So I determined that I wanted 240 by doing exactly what we watched, watching a recording of a session and seeing what the frame rate was. Like, look at this frame here. It was at 228 during some action. So it was clearly possible that 240 was a good frame rate for getting close when things are crazy, but not losing potential by going too high that it can't keep up when things are really wild. But there's another time when that's important for me. And that's when I'm doing a one-on-one deathmatch with a godlike bot. And in that case, I don't have half a dozen bots or 10 bots or 20 bots. When there's a huge outdoor map, sometimes I'll have 24 bots against me and they're all on the same team. They're not shooting at each other. They are only shooting at me. I am a team of one. And so anyways, when it's one-on-one against a godlike bot, then I don't have that kind of craziness, and 300 frames per second sustained is realistic. And so I have a whole different set of settings for that. So you see, it's important to know when you're doing this kind of precision hacking in terms of getting the maximum performance out of your rig, you need to know what you're doing and then tune everything for that. You can actually make presets for this sort of thing if you're really serious about it. I just quickly change back and forth since I just have those two modes, either 240 or 300. So, one last thing to mention about that, about the whole 300 thing, is I play UT3, which is extremely old. It's about 15 years old now, I think. But it has fantastic, low-level, customizable capability where you are defining parameters not within the game engine itself, but within initialization files. So you have to edit the file, look for the settings that you wish to hack, if you will, and set them exactly the way you want. So you have an incredible amount of control. Unheard of control for these sort of kids games that people play on their consoles. This is serious stuff where you can really control everything exactly the way you want. So you can get precise tuning. That's how I can get 300 FPS sustained on a 10-year-old system. Yes, my video card is only 1 year old, but everything else is 10. My CPU is an Intel 3770K. Look it up. 2013, baby. So anyways, I think that pretty much covers it. So I think that we'll leave you now with another round of play. This was at the beginning of the session. Once I actually click on the right window, eh? There we go. So I had not yet turned on the frame counter, which I'm about to do. Here we go. Just typing it in. There it is. All right. See you later. Let's see some heads roll.